A New York City landlord rises to the halls of political power. He's mocked by the elites that he wants to join, but attains a political position by playing on the fears of the common people. Once he's in charge, he begins building his base, a cult of personality, and starts railing against domestic enemies. Controversy and accusations of criminal activity swirl around him, but none stick. Who is he? The Kingpin or Donald Trump? And how was Daredevil able to do this when the show was written while Biden was still president? First off, to examine the Kingpin-Trump parallels, we have to start with the elephant in the room, the way that they militarize the police. In Daredevil Born Again Season 1, Kingpin actively seeks out cops who have a reputation for corruption and excessive violence in order to form his Anti-Vigilante Task Force, or AVTF. He does this for two reasons. One, they're more likely to be in trouble of losing this job and want to milk it for all it's worth. Secondly, if they're willing to commit police brutality, they're probably more willing to do the same on his behalf. We can see that ICE follows similar recruiting tactics, only instead of searching for the most corrupt, they're searching for the least fit for the same reason. They've lowered their requirements to 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and 1.5 miles in 14 minutes. Somehow, a third of the people are still failing this. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not exactly physically fit, and I can do basically twice as well in all of these categories. By lowering the requirements to join and spreading the sign-on offer over 5 years, but making it so that they have to pay it back if they leave for whatever reason, they've essentially handpicked the people who will follow orders no matter what, are desperate for a job, cannot read the fine print, and are true believers in the cause. The way that Trump and Kingpin utilize these forces is very similar as well. In Season 1, he sends them to enforce a citywide curfew. In Season 2, he has them oversee the salvage of the Northern Star and quell riots. Neither of these have anything tangible to do with vigilantes. Likewise, working as TSA agents has nothing tangible to do with immigrations and custom enforcement. Additionally, Trump is sending ICE over to Minnesota, which has a mere 0.68% of the illegal immigrant population, as opposed to more border cities in places like Texas where there are a ton. Why does he do it? Well, it's simple, because Minnesota is a blue state and because Governor Tim Walz ran against him in the 2024 election. Both also have jails that lie outside of the existing bounds of governmental authority. In Daredevil Season 2, we see that Jack Duquesne, aka the Swordsman, is held in a prison that technically doesn't exist and his lawyers are not allowed in. ICE deportation camps like Alligator Alcatraz are similarly opaque and impenetrable by authorities and lawyers alike. In a conversation with Daredevil's law partner Kirsten McDuffie and District Attorney Hochberg, Hochberg says that the evidence doesn't matter. He ends up fabricating evidence with Heather Glenn, the psychiatrist responsible for determining Jack's mental state. The DOJ, formerly under Pam Bondi, is infamous for getting lawsuits tossed out due to not building strong enough cases. A lot of the time, their suits aren't constitutionally sound and they don't have enough evidence. Not only that, the FBI under Kash Patel notoriously censored the Epstein files. I know what you might be thinking. That's all well and good, but as anyone who's studied history knows, this is a common thread amongst dictators in general. Kim Jong-un has the State Security Department, Stalin had the NKVD, Hitler had the SS. Nothing about this is particularly unique, right? Well, the way in which the police base was formed is definitely worth noting, and there's some more Trump-specific parallels. There's a scene in episode 3 where Buck describes Kingpin's circle as the royal court, so let's use that as our term for it. We'll be comparing Kingpin's court to Trump's cabinet. Starting with Kingpin and Trump, of course. They're rich, but they're not accepted as high class. During Season 1, Kingpin attends a party where all of the rich people refuse to help fund his port. Trump also famously struggled to integrate himself into the richest of the rich up until he became president. Let's look at this guy. No one knows his name, but it's Daniel Blake. I call him Doge Guy because he's pretty much a dead ringer for the Doge guys that Trump has waltzing around various federal agencies. Young, tech literate, and basically a hammer for his enemies. Him teaming up with BB Urick is a dead ringer for the way that Trump mobilized the online right and other social media influencers to help himself into the presidency. They're paid large sums of money in order to push the agenda. ICE itself has carved $8 million out of its budget on deals with social media influencers to try and get people to sign up. Vanessa is described as the queen, who's always watching, tallying the score, and is next in line to the throne. She lacks the charisma and force of personality that Kingpin has, but is his more competent counterpart. This is sort of like Trump and Vance. Cheryl, his campaign manager, is like Marco Rubio. She comes from an era of normal politics and hitched a ride to this administration under the assumption that it would be more of the same, only to find out too late that it isn't. Buck Cashman, which is a crazy name, is a total grifter who's in it for the money, sort of like Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, who went straight from working at hedge funds to Trump's administration. AVTF agent Powell is like Kristi Noem. Both of them are goons that are used to control the unpopular and violent arms of the government, which are intended to increase centralized control. Using the common strategy of good Tsar, bad viziers, these regimes shift the most unpopular aspects onto the people directly responsible for them and allow the leader who ordered these things to go scot-free. Mr. Charles isn't a member of the cabinet, but represents a controlling interest which uses the regime to suit their own ends. In this case, he's probably analogous to Israel or Russia, both of whom had a good reason to try and get Mr. Fisk to clog the Strait of New York. Or, wait, maybe I'm getting the lines mixed up. You get the idea. The funny thing about Matt Murdock is that even though he looks a lot like Zoran Mamdani, he actually has nothing in common with the guy. Zoran Mamdani has found himself actually quite on the good side of Trump, but Matt and Fisk are about as antagonistic as antagonists get. It's very odd because you'd think that the president wouldn't be a fan of this democratic socialist Muslim mayor, but he seems to really enjoy his company for whatever reason. But speaking of, both Trump and Fisk are currently fighting over a strait which contains an important shipping channel for the government. For Fisk, it's his new harbor port. For Trump, it's the Strait of Hormuz, which is the reason why oil prices are going up right now. In both cases, these straits became clogged when they enraged an adversary. For Trump, it was Iran. For Kingpin, it was Daredevil. Now they both deal with pressure from the US government over the blocked flow of goods. Both of them were shot at, almost assassinated, but the assassin failed and hit somebody else instead. In Daredevil Born Again Season 1, Matt Murdock and Kingpin are together when Bullseye takes a shot at the king, but it misses. This is because of Daredevil's intervention. Trump famously dodged a bullet on the campaign trail, which according to power scalers would put him at massively hypersonic. The clearest link that Fisk and Trump share is how they managed to get elected. The plan is simple. Make a certain group of people appear to be the enemy, the scapegoat, the source of all the economic and security ills that you're facing. Say if only you get rid of them, your life will be better. Once you're in power, execute. Figuratively and literally. Say that you need more powers to carry out your plan. Take more power if they don't let you. Continue to double and triple down on the decisions that got you elected in the first place and proclaim victory at every turn. In Born Again, Fisk claims that the vigilantes are all criminals and making the streets unsafe. He outlaws vigilante activities with the Safer Streets initiative, thus banning anyone who is classed as a vigilante and is given power to do whatever it takes to get rid of them. Trump also did this by declaring the US at war with drug countries, allowing him to bypass congressional approval and strike down fishing boats and deport immigrants without due process. Of course, they're not the same person. They've both got pages on the DSMV, but they're different chapters. Fisk is autistic coded, Trump is plausibly narcissistic. Fisk is socially awkward and takes large pauses in his dialogue. He eats the same thing for breakfast every day and can't bear to look people in the eye. He constantly fidgets and finds it unbearable when children sing off-key. Meanwhile, Trump is known for his unceasing stream of consciousness style of speaking. He's got the gift of gab and he knows it. He can't go a single conversation without making it about himself, and when someone famously bled out on his floor, he cared more about the stain. And of course, the biggest contrast. Fisk is a simp for his wife, whereas Trump couldn't care less. Now, before I get into whether this was intentional or not, I'd like to ask you guys to subscribe. I'm a small channel right now, and I'd really like to grow. Alright, let's continue. So, with all of these parallels, is that indeed what the writers intended? It's tough to say. Daredevil Born Again is a TV show which is an adaptation of a comic run. As we can see from this article, the showrunner Dario Scardapane, I think, claims that the parallels are coincidental. What we're seeing happening in the streets of New York in Daredevil Born Again happened in Cyprus in 1974, he says. So if you go back to the historical rise of autocrats, whether it's Nero, whether it's Pinochet, whether it's Franco, they follow a script. Yet the parallels are impossible to ignore. Perhaps it's simply happenstance that we can compare the President of the United States of America to a villain from a children's comic book turned TV show antagonist. Who knows?